Hi there. This is an update video on a big script report about Game of Thrones that came out in Vanity Fair last December. Headlining this, Dear God, confirmed proof that the Sansa rape subplot was not being planned as late as the script writing process on Season 4. Then right after that, reading through the scripts, yes, they actually meant the Arya versus Sansa Season 7 stuff to be real, that they were really trying to kill each other until right up at the last minute. It wasn't staged for the benefit of feeding false information Littlefinger's spies. And third, and this is more of an ongoing theme, just more evidence that these guys do not know how script writing works, and they have needlessly long descriptions within the script itself that the audience has no way of seeing this. It isn't in dialogue. I want to keep this shorter. It's more of a follow-up video to a series I just finished on the unaired pilot, the failure of the unaired pilot, which was completely their fault. It wasn't, it's hard to adapt. These are two novelists, Benioff and Weiss, who were moonlighting as scriptwriters, and everyone they showed it to said, you are making basic mistakes of exposition. I'll give you some explanation on this. What happened last December was Vanity Fair's Joanna Robinson, who's a great reporter on this, figured out that they've actually been sending archived copies of the Game of Thrones scripts to the Writers Guild of America library in Los Angeles. It isn't online. You have to physically go to Los Angeles to read them, so she went in and looked at everything. And I live in New York City, so I can't go there. If anyone here can, please tell me if you're willing to report on this. That up until this point, the only scripts we had access to were the ones they occasionally submit to be nominated for an Emmy, like Mother's Mercy, the Season 5 finale. That would be online, so we could see PDFs of it. This is all the scripts. So realize I'm reporting on her report, which, she was trying to cover 5 years' worth of stuff. So this is filtered through what she said, and I would like a look at these myself. The Vanity Fair report was actually made in two parts, two separate articles, both posted a few days after each other, first week of December. But it's one big report. Read both parts so you can see the contrast between them. That part one is on Robinson going over Benioff and Weiss's script across 7 seasons, 1 to 7, mostly focused on the later ones, and 18 big points she got out of them. Part 2 is very specifically focused on the last script that Martin wrote for the TV series for Season 4, Episode 4.2, The Lion and the Rose, the Purple Wedding, where Joffrey dies. And after that, he distanced himself from the show, and Season 5 was going off the rails onward from that. That what exactly was happening behind the scenes in the fallout of their relationship at this point? Robinson's subheader sums it up well, that the differences between page and screen speak volumes about the growing rift between author and TV show. That there's things in it that were being set up that were later abandoned. Chief among which is, it contains confirmed proof that the Sansa rape in Season 5 was not planned by as late as the writing stage of Season 4. Or at least that they didn't tell Martin, were they hiding this from him for 2 or 3 years? That would still be a shocking breach of trust. That isn't an excuse. We were just lying to him about it. I personally don't think that's what happened. It seems to fit the pattern of every major change in the show was an impulsive decision Benioff made at the last minute, when even if you wanted to do the Sansa rape, taking that as a given, there's massive plot holes in it that you didn't even set it up well. The same as they're all the same problem, like Dorne or Talissa, where you made plot holes because you did it too late. All these major changes, Talissa, Dorne, stuff in the Battle of the Bastards, changes to Tyrion and the Tysha reveal, all of these were last-minute changes that Benioff made impulsively without thinking them out. So I'm taking this as a big piece of evidence that no, even when Season 4 was in its early writing stages, you did not plan out marrying Sansa to Ramsay and haphazardly merging these storylines. And there's so much other evidence of that, like that the Dark Sansa costume that Clapton made, this power suit for her rising in power in the Vale, and they kept saying she's going to be a big player next year, and then she wasn't, that this is a sudden change they made. What exactly was said? Well, in Martin's script for episode 4.2, it was setting up the fake Arya subplot. That in the books, she never even meets the Boltons. She stays in the Vale, and Ramsay marries Jane Poole, passed off as Arya. Jane Poole is their childhood friend who also grew up with them at Winterfell, so she can plausibly pass herself off as Arya because they'll ask, like, who is the blacksmith at Winterfell? Mikken. That she knows enough details about their lives to answer questions. And the exact exchange, Martin has Roose Bolton tell his bastard son, "We have a much better match in mind for you. A match to help House Bolton hold the North. Arya Stark." His script was setting up the fake Arya subplot. And this is just a heads up that you guys need to read this and see it for yourselves, and this big piece of news. I'm not going to break that down with further analysis now. That will be for more dedicated long-form Sansa videos later. Just this is a big piece of the puzzle, big piece of evidence that we have confirmed proof the scripts weren't doing this as late as season 4. So keep that in mind. So I said there are 3 big points. The Sansa rape, Arya versus Sansa in season 7, and their general screenwriting is awful. Their exposition is terrible and unclear. So I'm going to actually cover Arya versus Sansa last because it's an outgrowth of the other one. Their scripts are unclear. It flows from that. Now, this video is really a follow-up to a much longer documentary I just made on the failure of the unaired pilot script. And I want to tell you, go and check that out if you haven't already, or at least go to the 20-minute conclusion, which has a lot of screenshots of scripts showing off this isn't how a script should look, this isn't how exposition works, these are basic mistakes. And to sum it up a little here, that when they showed it, the pilot, in a private screening to other screenwriters, the basic exposition was awful. It was incomprehensible. And they said it isn't even clear that Jaime and Cersei are brother and sister when it ends on the cliffhanger that they're having sex with each other. And yes, when you go through the script, and I've circled this in blue and red here, they never notice that you only mention their brother and sister in the scene descriptions, not in the dialogue parts that the audience can see. They're oblivious that we can't read the script they're making, and the whole that they're novelists who really don't have screenwriting degrees. When you look through their scripts compared to Martin's, Benioff's looks like it's a book. It looks like you are reading prose, like a full paragraph going over the inner mental thoughts of a character. That these aren't just notes to tell the actor how to play the scene. This is someone writing it like a book that they don't understand, the audience can't see in their head. And this is objectively a failure because it couldn't even convey, factual information. Jaime is Cersei's brother. And don't take my word for it. Brian Cogman has given these bizarre rants on video. I have clips of this on my channel where they're saying, I can write an entire scene in which these actors don't speak, and I'm scripting the subtext, and they can convey that with just a look. It is impossible to convey informational content to a TV audience through script directions that are never spoken aloud. Maybe it affects the tone a little, but not complex thoughts like that. This is why we just have scenes of characters staring at each other with no dialogue, in part to just showing off the actor. Also, they've talked themselves up into believing they're capable of that, giving exposition this way. I like what one of my Twitter followers, how she put it, Heather. So, Benioff and Weiss were doing the unnecessarily long shots of people emoting without speaking because they think their script is saying something deep when it's just basic storytelling thing, right from the failed pilot. Yes, and there is proof of this. They were always this bad and unqualified at screenwriting from the beginning. And what the Vanity Fair report showed us was just a lot more evidence, a lot more examples from across 7 seasons that they kept doing this basic mistake. They never learned, they never improved. That they'll, like a novel, give a bunch of explanation in the scene descriptions that the audience can't see, and not realize we didn't explain this in the dialogue part the audience is exposed to. Let's start with the Jon Snow Daenerys love story in season 7, which has received mixed reviews at best, that you didn't really set it up that well. They seem to just stare at each other a lot and fall in love. As many of my followers already caught on, they think they can convey this through stares. And, well, the actor read the description, and they can play this complex... This is a full sentence or a paragraph that you're giving them and saying, play that with a look. No one can. So, Jon can't help but stare at Dany, though. He had no idea she'd look like that. She's cute as a bug. Dany is somewhat less impressed in that same scene, as she thinks maybe he's not as dumb as he looks. He'd like to keep looking at her and forget about the world events weighing on his soul, but that's just not the kind of guy he is. And a screenshot here goes on like this. She opens her mouth to speak, but only tears come. The tears she has held at bay until now, because people were watching and she still had hope. Here with Jon and only Jon, she lets go of hope and poise and weeps. Jon has truly never seen a girl like this before. Her beauty, her strength, her grief, and the pain it makes him feel. They all push him to the realization that he loves her. That is beautiful prose. Book prose does not belong in a screenplay. That this isn't just instructing the actor. This is meant to be beautiful to read aloud. It's a novelist who does not... He can't shift gears. This has to be in dialogue or not at all. When you read a normal script, this is a full paragraph. You shouldn't have a conversation of a character's mental state like that. Books do that, not screenplays. So what we got was, fade in here. That's what we, the audience, are supposed to be intuiting from these lengthy stares with no dialogue going on between Clark and Harrington. This off-screen, and this... The report just goes, oh, these are Easter eggs. This is called a failure of exposition by an amateur who doesn't know what he's doing. 7 years into it. Just these are the thoughts going on behind their eyeballs, and they're capable of emoting that. So if you're wondering where that problem stems from, if you haven't seen my video on the pilot, please check it out. I talk about this a lot more. They don't know how exposition works. And there's other beats like that, like Davos perving on Missandei. It'll have, like, funny asides. These scripts are meant to be funny to read in ways the audience could never see. If Jon gives Davos an easy you old man look, and it goes awkward, it reads like a book. And that extends to fight scenes and stuff, that it'll actually say, like the Variety article talks about this more, like the Sand Snakes fight is meant to be cool. But he doesn't script it out step by step. Benioff just writes, this is a really cool fight scene. Same thing with Arya versus Brienne. He goes, well, they actually took the time to do that well. She shows off fight moves from the different styles she's learned over the years, like water dancing or the Faceless Men. And you can't just say it's the coolest explosion you've ever seen to your visual effects guys. Or it's a really cool fight scene that on the page, this is being made by someone else. That just more of that he doesn't really comprehend. This is existing as a TV show, not just a really cool reading script on the page. But moving on, read more about that in the article. Last big point of that, the failure of exposition, is why is Tyrion suddenly in love with Daenerys? Apart from the exposition thing, this is just a stupid idea that, like, they gutted Tyrion's book storyline where it's really dark, and he's going with Penny the other dwarf to Meereen, and he's worried about Tysha. Tysha is a shoe that's going to drop eventually. And we're not getting the Tyrion story from his real final story that we've been building up to in Season 8. We're getting, I don't know, pair off Tyrion likes Dany or something, like the last season of Lost or Heroes, where things were just getting crazy because they ran out of ideas. And this is an adaptation. There were ideas. You chose not to do Tysha. So, at the very least, even if you wanted to show Tyrion kind of has feelings for Daenerys, why? That she's this Mary Sue that everyone who meets her falls in love with her. Even if you wanted to portray that, they weren't doing it well, doing it accurately. conveying it accurately to the audience. That in their minds, according to the scripts, they've been building that up since season 6. They're saying he loves her in the scripts a lot. With these, again, the looks he gives, which is just, these are celebrity actors mugging faces for the camera, and they're impressed with that because they don't know what they're doing. Like season 6 finale, as they leave Meereen, Tyrion studies her face. Dany is staring into the distance so Tyrion is able to watch her from up close. God damn, but she is beautiful. He watches her for a beat too long and turns away. Lost in her own thoughts, she doesn't notice that he's flustered. Just, you shouldn't be going that deep into their mental state. You tell an actor how to play it, not... This is part of his mental narration, his inner monologue. God damn it, she's beautiful. Like, the actor doesn't need to know that. You're writing this the way a book is written. Related to this, and I talk about it in the pilot video, the way you give exposition is either with dialogue or with camera work. You know, have the character focus on something. And Benioff and Weiss don't comprehend that their exposition is bad on a visual level as well. They don't give camera directions other than point the camera directly at Lena Headey's face in a close-up with no dialogue and no movement. These are both halves of a whole. They're both very important of just why is this failing. That when you realize they're staring right at the camera to show off these performances and these faces, as they put it. That's a stock phrase they use. So I talked about this in the pilot series of videos I made. In contrast, A Handmaid's Tale, you'll have POV shots, first-person POV shots, that she's the prisoner in the house, and she'll eye a pair of gardening shears that she's wondering, can I go for them as a weapon to stab my captor in the throat? And they don't need dialogue to convey that. You do it with the camera looking at objects, that this is what the character is looking at. And try to think of the last time that Game of Thrones had a first-person POV shot. Like the way Breaking Bad did that all the time, showing what the character is looking at to show their mental state, or what they're thinking about, and they just don't do that, and that's another tool. It's in the toolbox of exposition that they have ignored. And in contrast, just to show you what it's like when it's done well, Martin actually knows how screenwriting works, so his scripts noticeably give the camera work instructions that Benioff and Weiss do not. I mean, I've read scripts for other shows like Star Trek and stuff that they have camera directions of, here's a POV shot through this character's eyes. They don't do that in Benioff and Weiss. Martin does. First-person POV shots are not inherently showing off. If you're looking out of Cersei's eyes at something, you inherently wouldn't be seeing Lena Headey's face. But that's bad. What Benioff wants is to constantly have the camera pointing at her face to show off these performances and these faces. So we don't get first-person POV shots. Here's what it says in his script. It's Ramsay is using his hunting dogs to hunt down and kill a girl in the beginning of Season 4. We are in her POV now. We hear the sound of her ragged breathing. Trees race past. Branches whip at our face. Then our POV stumbles and falls. The ground rises up to smash us in the face. And Martin instructs, arrows then shoot right at the camera because we're seeing through her eyes as she's killed. And then the script switches to Theon. Now we're looking through the eyes of the limping man. Yeah, first-person shots, but if the camera was Theon's eyes looking out of his face, we couldn't show off Alfie Allen crying. You can't convey informational content this way, and an outgrowth of this is now getting back to Arya and Sansa fighting each other at Winterfell was incomprehensible to everyone. Was your intention that they were fake fighting to feed false information to Littlefinger? Because that's what we as sane people consider tricking Littlefinger. That when they keep going, she outplayed Littlefinger. How? How did she outplay Littlefinger? Arya saying she's going to cut Sansa's face off was supposed to be... Well, screenshotting this from the report, it's just saying... Throughout Season 7, Arya's right, she knows it, now she's really angry. That none of this was staged. The script directions all act like Arya is really angry. Gives remarks from her mental narration that Arya is really angry at this, and she thinks, why is Sansa doing this? That this was not staged. That also, from the descriptions, apparently the moment when Sansa is smart and realizes how much of a player she is and realizes that Littlefinger has been manipulating her is in the very last episode when he goes, Arya wants to be Lady of Winterfell instead of you, and she realizes that's not Arya's character. She never wanted to be a ruler. Like, that was the point when that's him overreaching. And I have a whole other video on the Arya Sansa Winterfell storyline, why it failed, and is just showing off the actors. Please check that out. That's an hour long there too. But there were deleted scenes for that. That there was a deleted scene. They've talked about this. They actually filmed it. Of after this, in the original script, I think it's Littlefinger tells her Arya wants to rule Winterfell. She realizes only at this moment, oh, she would never want to rule Winterfell. Littlefinger is manipulating me. And up until this, she was blindly trusting him. And then she goes to Bran and asks him to use his magic visions to find dirt on Littlefinger, which, that's Bran defeating Littlefinger using literal magic, not Sansa outmaneuvering him politically. That it was all set up for, oh wow, she manipulated him. She got him in a room and then said, how do you answer these charges? Lord Baelish. This is stupid. That they thought that they can't verbalize this. How is this Sansa manipulating him? Because he was led into the room thinking she'd say it about Arya. No, that isn't how political manipulation works. This is why so many people were desperately trying to retcon it as, oh no, they were arguing to fake out Littlefinger. Because that's what real writing would have been. Now I must warn, scripts go through multiple drafts. And this is only the one they submitted, right? And the fact that they later edited out that scene of Sansa asking Bran for help may have been an attempt to retcon this. I'm bringing this up because other shows that were circling the drain, like the later seasons of Battlestar Galactica, did this a lot. And they admitted it, that, oh, we filmed the scene one way, and the script and filming it was one way, but we decided that was kind of stupid, so during the editing process, we moved the scenes around to change the implication of it. Like, you can't be rewriting something in the editing room. I mean, from the point of that guy wants to kill that guy to wait, no, he doesn't want to kill that guy. In the editing room. But I've seen examples of this with, like, Battlestar Galactica, that when things are getting really sloppy, this shouldn't even have been filmed like this. You should be hashing this out in the writing phase. The 3 phases of writing, then filming, then editing. And particularly because other stupid things they did, like Ilaria killing Doran Martell, they'll just go, yup, she wanted to kill him. But when we ask actors or writers about why is this happening, what was their goal, was Arya faking out to Littlefinger, they give evasive answers and they play coy about it, which says a lot more than just, yup, it was one or the other. The fact that they don't give a committal answer, I fear that what happened, and I can't prove this as an open question, is that it was indeed scripted like this and filmed and played like this, that they were genuinely angry at each other, and when they saw it in the editing room, someone realized this makes no goddamn sense. So they tried to edit it in such a way that maybe it was implying that Arya was faking out Littlefinger the whole time. But ultimately, you have to take a step back from a Doyleist perspective and realize this doesn't matter. The writing was just plain incoherent. There is no TV Arya as a consistent fictional character. There is no, and I am an admin on a wiki for this, and I'm telling you, there is no TV continuity. There is no persistent character Arya anymore, any more than there was, like, late Battlestar had a consistent Starbuck character, or a Hero Season 5 had a consistent hero character, that they're randomly maneuvering the actors around into scenes to show them off as stereotypes of their earlier performances from earlier seasons. And you, please tell me about this in the comments. You've seen this when shows wear out. And just, we are randomly maneuvering people around, and we'll think of reasons later, if at all. And these aren't just minor characters like Dorne. It's Maisie Williams and Sophie Turner are going around the interview circuit, and none of these media types has the integrity to ask them about this anymore, of your main storyline last season, what the heck was going on? So they may have been trying to change this in the editing room. At the very least, it was scripted this way. But either scenario, this is just plain incoherent writing, and the ultimate thing was, we want to have a big Maisie Williams scene, and we'll think of a reason for it later. They've been doing this for years. So these are the three major points from this Vanity Fair report. And it actually says a lot of other things, and I encourage you all to go and read through it thoroughly. But with the Season 8 premiere fast approaching, I do not have time to give this the full 2-hour documentary it deserves, exhaustingly going over every point. So I'm just going to quickly list off some of the major things that are in the report. I want you to go and read them, and just watch out for these. Other notes from Benioff and Weiss's scripts. Well, first off, the White Hunt. The script itself calls the unnamed wildlings red shirts, mockingly lampshading the plot armor around the main characters. Oh no, John's in the ice, maybe he'll die. No, he doesn't. That doesn't happen. We knew they were calling them red shirts. The cast and crew were calling them that in behind-the-scenes production videos. Turns out that originates in the script itself. Another thing is that Vanity Fair brought this up, not me, that director Alan Taylor claimed that he ad-libbed the point when Tormund almost dies, but it's actually in the script. But this is the last phase submitted script. Scripts get updated all the time to reflect what started as an ad-lib on set, that they formally re-scripted. Maybe it was just updated to reflect the change that they had originated with Taylor, so he's not necessarily lying. I'm not going to read more into that. We'd have to ask. So, whatever. A big one, though. The Daenerys Season 3 finale crowd surfing moment indeed refers to her as, quote, a shrinking mote of white amidst this crowd of all-black slaves. You remember, the camera zooms out until we just seeing it from a bird's eye view, and she's in the middle of this huge crowd of slaves, and at the time, they said, and I believe, that, well, we were filming in Morocco. All of the extras were dark-skinned. And I believe that. That's what you get as extras. And then, that was Season 3. In Season 4, they really made it a point to show that, like the Romans, they have race-blind slavery in Marine, that the slaves were racially mixed. You had prominent slaves who were white, that when Grey Worm was giving them weapons, some of the slave leaders were white. They made some of... So you can... Okay, that's what the local casting pool was, because they'd moved to Croatia then. And I kept even defending this was just an accident. But even then, the crowd surfing on them is weird. But now, in the script itself, it says, we acknowledge that she's the only white person in the crowd. Like the Tormund thing, maybe this was the last script they wrote, and it was just, they'd been on set, and were just observationally describing, oh yeah, we already really filmed this, we're just describing this shot of Emilia Clarke is white and everyone else isn't, but still, it's hard to get around that. Okay, maybe this is just describing what they had already filmed, because it's the script they submitted, not the one they were shooting with. But that is weird, and someone in a sane world would ask them about this, of, okay, casting considerations, the extras in Morocco, or none of them were white, fine. Why does your script specify that she's the only white person there? It's just weird, and the fact that they didn't even address it, and maybe they were building her up as this white savior only to knock her down in Season 4, as it's not like that, it's more complicated. Then they should have said that in an interview. Other points. A lot of people remarked on this, it's still stupid. The Jaime and Bronn not sinking in the river during the dragon battle, that he was riding a horse through ankle-deep water to get to Daenerys, and suddenly it's so deep that he's sinking in it. And I think the implication is that Bronn was able to save him because Bronn isn't wearing armor, that they had this mental image, and it's in the script, of as Jaime and Bronn are hiding under the water from the flames, he sees all these Lannister men at the bottom. They sunk to the bottom because they're wearing heavy armor, and he can see them drowning. But is it that the strength of the current carries them forward, or that Bronn, who's not wearing armor, picks him up? I have no idea. We know from spy reports that we know that scene was heavily refilmed or at least rescripted, that this image, they wanted a beautiful image of Nikolai slowly drowning with a worried look on his face. And again, it's fixating on his facial reaction to seeing all his men drowning, without the plot mechanics of, is this a deeper part of the river they got swept into? Why are they not? And there are ways to fix it with better camera work. As I was saying before, that's what makes it so insulting, that there are potential ways to fix it. You just didn't use good camera work to at least convey, oh, this is a deeper part of the river. Again, failure of exposition, and even the casual viewers are noticing this doesn't make a lot of sense. Another minor point is that the script itself refers to Benjen as just cold hands at times. But that could really mean anything one way or the other. That we already knew in behind-the-scenes videos, Benioff and Weiss were calling him Benjen Cold Hands, or Cold Hands Benjen. And does that mean he's necessarily the character Cold Hands in the books is going to turn out to be Benjen, or did the TV show condense two characters together? This doesn't really provide an answer for that. It's just they were calling him Cold Hands Benjen, and now they refer to him as their Cold Hands in their script. Well, obviously they condensed them. That doesn't necessarily mean this reflects the novel, so you could read anything into that. That isn't really a revelation. And lastly, other notes from George R. R. Martin's episode 4.2 script. A lot of book points from The Purple Wedding were cut from the final version, things that were being set up that Benioff and Weiss later abandoned, which they should have done. The revelation that Joffrey is no stranger to Valyrian steel when he gets his sword, Widow's Wail. He says, I'm no stranger to Valyrian steel, and Tyrion realizes Joffrey sent the assassin to kill Bran in Season 1. How much setup was on that Valyrian steel dagger that had no payoff because of this? Oh, people wouldn't remember it. But suddenly we're supposed to remember that dagger in Season 7? You thought we'd forget it then, but remember, was it cut for runtime? Then move it to an earlier episode. Like the first premiere. This is just sloppy, that there was no follow-up on the mystery of who sent that assassin. Read the article for more on this. There was much more Shay build-up, that there was actually, Tyrion is really trying to scare her into leaving before she gets killed, and to the point that she pulls a knife out to defend herself. I think this is Benioff and Weiss pressuring him to do this. They're trying to set up that she doesn't pull a knife on him in self-defense when he strangles her later. She's begging for her life in the books, and he strangles her because they don't want to show Tyrion as a gray character. They turn him into this always perfect Mary Sue. No, he only strangles Shay in self-defense because she pulls a knife on him. That doesn't happen in the books. There was another longer Varys scene in the dungeon where he's just telling her about reports about your father knows about Shay. So that's the larger question of why did they change the Tysha, Shay, Tyrion, ultimately Tyrion killing his own father setup was in flux. That things were being changed with that. Why? Topic for another day. Also, there were more Bran visions. Bran has some visions in this when he tries to, warg with the Weirwood tree, and just a few more complicated things, like he'd see a vision of Arya with her face was in flux because she's actually becoming a faceless man. A vision of child Lyanna and Benjen, which we ultimately got in Season 6. A bit longer of a flashback of Jaime killing the Mad King, which they totally phoned in. Like, fraction of a second, he doesn't even have a goddamn beard. But it wasn't anything new. It was just more lengthier shots that we ultimately got in other visions anyway. Would have played out differently. Another thing, this comes as no surprise, is they were sort of setting up sending Jaime to the Riverlands. They would have Jaime remarking to his father as they were walking into a meeting, there's mass starvation in the Riverlands, we need to do something now that we've won. There's bandits everywhere, we need to maintain control, or what the hell are the Freys doing? But we know, they've admitted, we weren't planning to send Jaime to Dorne in Season 5. That the Riverlands storyline, which ultimately they worked into Season 6, that would have happened earlier. But we knew that already, that when they were writing Season 4, they were not planning to go to Dorne, and that was a huge last-minute rewrite. So in Martin's earlier script for the beginning of Season 4, logically you would find set up for what Jaime was originally doing following his book storyline, which is go to the Riverlands. So this isn't anything we didn't already know. We know they were going to do the Riverlands first. Interesting little beat is that this isn't in the books. In his script, when Joffrey is choking to death, he would have had Oberyn rush to try to perform an emergency tracheotomy on him using a dagger, which I think was probably, to show off that Oberyn is educated. That he actually went to the Citadel. He's this fighter, he's this dashing fighter, but he's also very intelligent. He's very well educated. So I think that would have just been to show that if they actually mention on screen, like in the next episode, he went to the Citadel, he studied poisons, he's showing off his medical knowledge. He knows how to do that, a tracheotomy. I think you're right to cut that. It would have just eaten up screen time, but interesting little beat he thought of. One other big thing people are noticing and wondering, is this a book spoiler? Is that in the script, Martin left a note saying, important note for future reference to the other writers. A season or two down the line, Ramsay's pack of wolfhounds, his hunting dogs, are going to be sent against the Stark direwolves, so we should build up the dogs as much as possible in this and subsequent episodes. And that led to all sorts of speculation of, are they going to fight the direwolves in the next book? That would be interesting. I personally don't think we should necessarily make too much of this, because, well, first off, direwolves plural. I don't think Nymeria is going to come back from the Riverlands to help fight the Boltons, and I don't see Bran or Rickon coming to help Jon with their direwolves to be with Ghost. There's only 4 direwolves left at this point in the story. So, given that there's plural, I think it would be going after Bran and Rickon. They have both of their direwolves with them. It might have just been an extension of that idea in Season 4, where they do that return to Craster's Keep thing, which was a last-minute addition of, giving Kit something to do while they're waiting for the next big battle scene, that they invented that they would send Bolton men to the Wall to try to look for Bran and Rickon hiding beyond the Wall. And just, okay, maybe in an early idea they would have had Ramsay send along some of his hunting dogs with them to help look for Bran and Rickon. And that they'd be going beyond the Wall looking for Bran and Rickon, and they'd fight Summer and Shaggy Dog and kill the hunting dogs. It could have been something as simple as that, and I'm leaning towards that was all it was. It was just this added element to that Find Bran and Rickon story that they really kind of forgot about. So I don't think that's a book spoiler. I don't know. And another pervasive thing that they talks about this a lot more in the Vanity Fair report, please check it out, is that Martin will frequently mention minor background characters from the books, and he's not wasting time on dialogue with them. He'll just go, oh yeah, that named character from the books is standing there in costume. And yes, they're cut with greater or lesser justification, like the way Season 1 had Aaron Santagar in it, the Master-at-Arms for the Red Keep. But he doesn't talk or anything. So it's like that. The Season 4 script has Olenna Tyrell's 2 guards left and right. It has Penny the female dwarf in it, who performs at the Purple Wedding, leading a question of how much of Book 5 Tyrion storyline did Martin still think they were going to do at this point? He goes along with Penny to Meereen, she becomes a love interest. So what was going on with Penny? It might have been as little as like a cameo by Penny, and then she wouldn't appear again. What did they tell Martin they were going to do in Season 5? But that raises more questions than answers. Just at the very least, she would have cameoed. Confusing, it mentions that Aris Oakhart is in the script. I don't think he would appear on screen, just logically. He's in Dorne now, and they said we wouldn't have shown Dorne. I think what probably would have happened is that, Oberyn in dialogue would mention him by name. He would say, yes, Myrcella is being watched over by Aris Oakhart. That when she left to go to Dorne in Season 2, you could see they were careful to show a Kingsguard went with her, but you only see him from behind because he hasn't been cast yet. So they probably would have just name-dropped him in dialogue. And just other points where they were setting up minor characters, some of them who had dialogue, in his script, he would have set up that Sir Osmond Kettleblack is a new member of the Kingsguard. And so they would have put in a lot of characters who got cut, like Osmond Kettleblack and Moonboy, for all I know. Another interesting thing is Martin's scripts actually do mention female rulers or black people from the books in the background like this. Like Aaron Santagar doesn't talk, but he's Dornish. Female rulers from the Reach or whatever, just as they're in the background, you can argue about how much it counts if they don't talk, but they're part of the world. And this is the second episode of Season 4. Westeros.org, other book sites were critical of when the Dornish party shows up in the first episode, the one right before this. They gender-swapped female rulers from Dorne into male ones without explanation. Even the one who talks has been changed. He says to Tyrion, Oberyn actually went ahead into the city this morning. That Lord Blackmont, House Blackmont is ruled by a woman in the books at this time. Why did you gender swap them? Or they cut out that it's a major port city, King's Landing. It's not unusual to see black people, Summer Islander ship crews there, or nobles from the Summer Isles. So like in the Purple Wedding script, it'll say, there's a tall black Summer Islander lord visiting for this state occasion wearing a magnificent feather cloak. So just Martin will actually put female rulers or black people in the background because they're book characters. And do Benioff and Weiss think cutting this is streamlining the exposition? Because it's not even stuff that's in dialogue. And these are the guys who themselves don't know how visual exposition works and couldn't even convey that Jaime and Cersei are brother and sister in dialogue. Can't convey things Sansa was trying to do with Brienne with a look because they don't move the camera off their faces. That just, this isn't streamlining, this isn't moving characters around, it's Benioff and Weiss have proven they were always bad at screenwriting, and it's not something that, it improved over time. They're learning. I remember Season 5, after how bad it was with Dorne and Sansa and Stannis, the brainwashed people, the show apologists were saying, well, they're learning. And 5 years into this, 7 years into this, you should expect a lot of problems like this in Season 8 and at high levels, that they are just plain bad at exposition, in dialogue or visually. And I'm saying, go and check out these articles and look at the contrast with how Martin is doing right, what they don't understand. I'm not singling out Martin as this paragon. I've seen other scripts that do pretty much what Martin's does. Give directions with cameras and things. So we'll be picking this apart for a while. Please check it out, and please check out my other linked videos.